Good afternoon. It's great to be here with you today, both in person and online. And a lot of what you're going to hear from me over the next few minutes is really going to reinforce everything that you've heard this afternoon, but especially Charlotte and Lisa's comments, because we're looking at how do you reframe aging as an opportunity. Now, a little secret, I don't love the title of my presentation, and it has to do with that little plus sign right there. So I'll share with you a little bit more later on what we're doing about that. So we've heard repeatedly this afternoon and earlier today, big change in the world. Obviously, the percentage of our population around the planet over the age of 50 is expanding exponentially. This is not new news. We've known about this for decades. Yet still, for as much as we know about this, not a lot has changed over the last 10 to 15 years as we've begun preparing for this. As you just heard from Lisa, longevity is not about just living more. It's about fulfillment and thriving. Charlotte, I couldn't agree more. Aging in place needs to be eradicated from the vernacular. This idea of thriving as you get older. I don't know of anybody who wants to be worse next year than they are this year. But we also have to remember that there are those who need assistance with daily living. And we also heard earlier this afternoon about declining birth rates and the impact that has not only on our formal, but our informal caregiver population. So now more than ever, this idea of innovating differently is an imperative, not just here in the US, but globally. So what that means is that we've got to figure out new innovative ways to help people do more with less. So why is this important? Charlotte, you guys at AARP have done a magnificent job of framing the longevity economy. And you've been doing this work with Oxford Economics for probably 8, 9, 10 years now. And it's interesting to me how, as a consumer products company or a marketer or a branding agency, so little attention gets paid to the magnitude of the economic opportunity associated with our longevity economy. Quick show of hands, how many people knew that the longevity economy here in the US by GDP was the third largest economy on the planet? Not many. Well, Michael and Charlotte, you don't get the count. What some people also, it's nearly twice the size of Japan and nearly twice the size of the economy of Germany. It is an unprecedented economic opportunity for those who are willing to invest the time and energy to learn about this demographic. And it's growing, right? If we look out to 2030, it'll be 12.6 trillion, out to 2050, nearly 27 trillion, or roughly the size of the US GDP right now. So the question then becomes, how do you unlock the promise of the longevity economy? It really comes back down to knowing the people that make up this economy. And now more than ever, it's absolutely vital that we give voice to this all-important age group. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very often here, and it doesn't happen very often around the rest of the world. You would think, again, with the dollars that are involved, people would be paying attention. And like I said earlier, this is not a mystery. This didn't sneak up on anyone. At Linkage Launch, we're focusing on how to redesign and reimagine healthcare innovation with an eye towards how we do that for our older adult population. So I'll just share with you sort of in our part of the economy what drove us to this. And the fact of the matter is healthcare innovation in the US is very siloed. Rarely do hospitals innovate with senior living providers, with payers or policymakers. And so over the years, we found out that that is not the optimal way to design new products, new services, and new technologies for the aging population. So what we're doing, and I'll share more about this in detail tomorrow, is we're bringing this ecosystem together in a different way. We're bringing payers and policymakers together with providers, but most importantly, we're putting the customer or the consumer at the forefront of everything we do. So honestly, it's time to stop thinking about this idea of innovating for our 50-plus population and instead reframe our mindset to say we're going to innovate with them. So where do we start? Remember I said I didn't love the title of my presentation because of that little plus sign. Think about most of the research you see still today. You have a series of age ranges, and then you get to 65, and we throw a plus sign on it, because as we all know, everybody over the age of 65 is exactly the same, right? Wrong. It's not good enough to think in terms of innovation and product and technology development with a plus sign. So back in 2011, we set out to redefine that and started a consultancy to really better understand older consumers. And what we did was we broke our research down into 5-year increments, starting at 50, but going up to over age 100. And the insights were truly remarkable. So in 2011, we did one of the first, and I'm just going to offer this as an example of how powerful these voices can be. We did one of the first technology studies of its kind to really better understand the older consumer. Lots of assumptions being made that older adults can't or won't use technology, that they won't spend money on it. And so we were able to demonstrate something very different over the years. And super busy slide, intended to be this way. You can go to the website and download the whole study. The reason I put it this way is to illustrate visually just how much older adults have to say. So this study was roughly 2,400 people. And if you look in the bubbles, you'll see some of the age cohorts. And I love the fact that these are what people consider the oldest old. So we've got people from 75 to 79, from 85 to 89. And we're really now beginning to see that this idea of the digital divide, when we first did it, so what's that age where people start to become uncomfortable with the use of technology? Back then, it was somewhere in the mid-70s. As we've refielded this study, that number gets higher and higher, meaning a larger group of people are comfortable using technology. Now that digital divide doesn't show up until the mid-80s. And so some of the insights from our tech study, again, just to give you an example, smart TV ownership, higher among the age ranges in our study than in the rest of the US population. So if you're in the business of making smart TVs, it would be wise to pay attention to what older consumers have to say, because they're buying more of them than anybody. Streaming services on the rise. Smartphone usage, we just saw that, right? Increasing exponentially. Now, there's still some barriers to technology that we see today in terms of adoption, and they're the same ones we saw back in 2011. And the first is access. You heard earlier this morning this idea of infrastructure being so critical. If we want to be able to utilize technology as a health delivery vehicle and a way to enable healthy aging around the world, we still in this country need to have more access to high-speed internet to be able to deliver these solutions to our aging population, especially, as we heard early this afternoon, so much of it is in rural America, where we have to be able to get out in those homes. Secondly, awareness, and AARP has done a fantastic job of this, but they're only one, and we need more. And that is, how do we help older adults not only understand what technologies are available, but how to apply them to their lives and how to use them or maximize their effectiveness. And then finally, this idea of affordability. Back when digital health and technology for older adults was getting started, there was this mythical $49.95 a month number, that if you magically just charge that, people will buy it. And so what happened was every technology company decided they were going to charge $49.95 a month. I can tell you, on a fixed income, it's not $49.95 a month. We're still trying to figure out kind of where that sweet spot is. But again, the people with the answers are the people that we almost never talk to. So where do we go from here? I just offer this as an example of how we're thinking differently about innovation at Linkage Launch. You'll see right in the middle of that ecosystem that we're pulling together with all aspects of the healthcare continuum, the older adult. And you heard earlier this morning from Rear Admiral Mix, the importance of the social determinants of health. That is the overlay or the lens through which we view healthcare innovation. And so the opportunity then is, how do we bring this ecosystem together? How do we actively engage and listen to older adults, to payers and providers and policymakers, and ensure that the products, the services, the technologies that we as a company want to design are actually built with the users in mind. So I'm going to leave you with a call to action that has 4 points and then a brief story. If we want to reimagine innovation for older adults, not just in the US, but around the country, we have to put them at the forefront of consumer insight work, research and development, and user-centered design. They can't be an afterthought. We can't build it and then hope they will come. And of equal or maybe even more importance, as you're having these conversations, as you're engaging deeply with older consumers, we have to take those insights and educate other parts of the global economy, retailers, financial services. Lisa, you guys are doing an amazing job with that. Consumer packaged goods companies and technology businesses, hospitality and healthcare providers especially. But then there's businesses like in travel and leisure, fashion, dining and entertainment. Every single one of those sectors of our economy is counting an older and older customer base, and they would be well served to understand them at the forefront of innovation design. Beyond that, we have to track improvement. We really have to be paying attention to and reporting back to other people who are responsible for innovating, that we were able to move the needle. We were able to gain greater market share because our products were designed with that consumer at the forefront instead of as an afterthought. Our messaging, whether it be marketing or branding, sales, what you see in the media, we have to be able to track that, yes, when we change the way we talk about aging, when we change what the images look like, it's actually moving the needle. So then we have to think, finally, a little bit differently about how we apply our collective expertise for those of us who are in the aging business. And this is the story I want to leave you with. Several years ago, we were at a conference in San Francisco, and we took some senior living providers with us on a learning journey. And we went to a bank in San Francisco that had done a lot to reimagine sort of the space for older adults, for their older consumers. They really wanted to penetrate that part of the population because, as Lisa will tell you, there's an awful lot of older adults that have disposable income and money to invest. So they got rid of the teller windows, they widened up the aisles, they changed the doors, they put discrete reading glasses, changed the lighting and even the seating. And it was very well received by older adults. It was designed with them in mind, but not with them in reality. So one of our members brought their 86-year-old mother with them. Now, she loved the tour and loved to be able to get out and see this. And a lot of that really resonated with her. One thing they did in the bank, in the main lobby, was put up a 3-story glass and stone water feature. Now, for those of you who work in the aging space, you probably know what I'm going to say next. The sound of running water is an incontinence trigger. So the executive director from one of our retirement communities, 86-year-old mom, had to use the restroom. Guess where they didn't invest much money at all as a bank? In the restrooms. Let me tell you what the economic impact of that is. About 4 months later, I was back out in Silicon Valley speaking at a conference, and the managing director of the bank was there at a reception. And I shared this story with him. And all the blood drained from his face. He said, "What did you just say?" I said, "Yeah, that's an incontinence trigger for older adults, the very people you want to cater to." He said, "I need to make a phone call." He had ordered 6 more of those to be put in branches around the Bay Area, and he was going to cancel the order. That bank would have spent $1.8 million on water features that had a negative impact on the very consumer they were trying to cater to. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of knowing and understanding older adults and innovating with them and not for them. So, if we take time to actively seek to understand, transformational things will happen. Appreciate your time this afternoon.